Hi, this is Lakeside to London. I'm Hamish Beaumont, and joining me via Skype from London is Athletics Australia CEO Dallas O'Brien. Thanks for joining us, Dallas. I understand you're very busy. Tell us what the atmosphere is like in London and what's the mood like within the team.
Yeah, g'day Hamish. Yeah, look, the atmosphere, of course, is buzzing around the place. The athletics hasn't quite started, but I think everyone's had enough of the swimming and the cycling, etc., particularly from an Australian point of view. So we're hoping we can get our team on the track on Friday and all systems go.
It's obviously a pretty big team, and there's a fair bit of buzz around the team. What's your role within the organisation at this stage?
Yes, look, it is a big team. We've done really well considering it's the basis of it all being A qualifiers. So I was at Tunbridge there just a week or so ago, which was our main camp, just south of London. It's a prestigious boys' school, and the facilities were fantastic, and the buzz around the place was enormous. What I love doing is I got around and talked to every athlete and all the coaches and everyone, from people like Chris Wardlaw, have been on many campaigns, said it's the best facilities, Olympic facilities we've ever had. The staff and everyone around the school were very accommodating, but the athletes and people like Jess Trengove, who was first Olympics, and she was just buzzing and couldn't stop talking about things and her excitement So they're the people you love seeing and what they're going through and experiencing. People like Dale Stevenson, how hard he's worked, a good Melbourne lad, good Collingwood supporter. So he was having a wow of a time, and I think just lapping it all up. So that's what it's all about. There is a real good team atmosphere, and I think because of that, and because everyone's worked so hard to get where they have got, I think they'll all, everyone's fit and well at the moment on all accounts. I'm not in the village myself, but the latest is that everyone's fit and well. I talk fairly constantly with our high performance manager and head coach Eric Hollingsworth, and Nathan and Susan Hobson, who are doing a great job. So everyone's fit and well and ready to go.
Sounds great. Now, in the lead up to the games, athletics was in the news a lot for the nomination process, and what I'd like to ask about is what's the process now post London? Will there be a review of the nomination process, and who would be involved in that review?
I don't think there's anything wrong with the nomination process, other than it was perhaps it was a little confusing to the general public and the way the media and the way it came about. But basically the selectors were the people who were, and when we talk about the nomination process, there's the initial nomination process, of course, which nominated all the athletes to the AOC. But the controversy you're talking about, particularly around the Stephenson and the Josh Ross situation, and the Steve Solomon situation, which were selectors' decisions on who they believed would be nominated. They were already selected in the team, and then if there was a chance for them to run an individual, the selectors decide on who they felt the value to be nominated, who was in the best form to be nominated, and that was done in association with our head coach, Eric Hollingsworth. So the selectors clearly decided that Steve Solomon was the best choice for the 400 metres because we hadn't achieved an A. They were both B qualifiers, so we could only put one athlete in. So it was between Steve and John, and Steve got the nod.
Yep.
All the confusion came about was because we could put a reserve in. Our selectors decided not to put a reserve in. They didn't feel John was had done enough to secure that spot. What happened was the AOC, a little bit of a communication, because it all happened very quickly, because the LOC, the low cog here, all of a sudden gave us 24 hours to put that nomination in, to put either Steve or John in the team, if you like. We had to make the decision. So and we believed we had another week or so right up to 48 hours before the race. Eric Hollingsworth believed that. Dion Russell, our chairman of selectors, believed that. I believe everyone believed that. So all of a sudden we had to make a quick decision. The selectors went through that process, gave the nod to Steve, not to John. But in that confusion, if you like, the AOC decided to put John in as a reserve because there was communication. Fiona de Jong from the AOC was travelling to London at the time, so all these sorts of things happened. They put that in as a safety barrier, if you like, which was just fair enough. I can tell you right as we sit here at the moment that we have to confirm that nomination as of this evening.
Yep.
And Steve is fit and well, and Steve Solomon will go ahead as that nominated athlete. Yep. So that's sort of where all the confusion lay. I know John didn't like the decision,
yep.
And John came out and said some things that were quite regrettable, without inflaming the situation, without dragging it. And we realise in very testing times during the Olympics, we have decided we will review the whole process and what went on after the Olympics.
Okay, yeah. And would that review include a review of that A-only policy, whether there might be a return? Certainly there's been some clamour about whether we go for an A-only policy or we have sort of a policy where we try and send as many people as we can. Will that be considered as part of the review?
Well, yes. Look, we've been in the process of reviewing our whole strategic plan over about the last 6 months, Hamish, yep. And our high performance plan is part of that, of course. And so we have a subcommittee as part of our board members, David Grace, Matt Mahon, Peter Bromley, myself sit on that, and we've been working through that for quite a while. And so that will form part of that will be an ongoing part of that process. And yes, what happened at the Olympics and what happened during this time will be taken into account now. But as far as A's or B's go, that is still up for discussion. I think it's been proved that the A qualifying has been a successful one, as you know. I think it's the third largest team, and so we can't complain about numbers. That we've got the biggest team in the Olympics, in the Australian Olympic team at the moment, bigger than swimming and cycling, etc. So from that perspective, what it might do, what we have to look at is making sure if Bs are to be considered at all, and how that process is undertaken a lot sort of cleaner and clearer than perhaps it has been this time around. But and so there has been a little bit of confusion around that.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter about the restrictions around athletes and sponsorship. Nick Simmons is very heavily involved in that, and there's been some talk amongst some Australian athletes about an athletes' union. There is an athletes' commission. What's the view of AA on where that might lead? Would AA be in favour of the athletes' commission staying as it is, or would they be open to there being the formation of an athletes' union?
No, we believe that we've actually worked fairly hard with the Athletes Commission of recent times when Lisa Waitman took charge, and that there's a representative of the Athletes Commission actually sit on the Athletics Australian board, and Lisa was on that. She has recently stepped down from that position, but in that time worked very closely and with rewriting some of their policy, and so we think that's the best forum for the athletes. There's no doubt, and I know there's some people looking at being part of that commission. And but as far as sponsorship goes, I'm a little bit unsure what that's about. Of course, during the Olympics, the AOC take over all sponsorship and all commercial arrangements anyway. Yeah. And I'm not too sure what in your reference to Nick Simmons, to be honest. I'm not up with that. I don't read Twitter a lot, and I haven't really heard much about that one, to be honest, Hamish.
The next question I'd like to ask is about the goals that we've set as athletics for the Olympics. We had 6 medals was the goal that came out from Beijing. We're still pretty confident we're going to get there. And in the review, will there be some thought about maybe setting the goals in a different way? Will we consider, is that the best goal, or not in terms of the number of medals, but measuring it by medals, or would we try and measure it by how big our team is, or top eights, or would that come out in the review as well?
Look, I think the 6 medals has been thrown around. It was actually something that was set by our chairman Rob Fildes a couple of years ago, and Rob's not stepping away from that. But yes, it's only one measurement. I think we all recognise that there's only one measurement, and it is very much what happens on the day, etc., etc. But the reality is, and working closely with our partners at the Sports Commission, that medals do speak all languages, and setting the bar high. 6 medals is certainly a high standard. I know we've already had some discussions with Matt Favier, who the new head of the AIS, and maybe we should be looking at a range, and okay, so we look at our sport and say, okay, how do we make this sport 4 to 8 medal sport, or 6 to 10 medal sport, or some sort of range perhaps. But of course, and yes, you do need to take into account all the other successes around the size and how many people we have in the actual who have qualified with A's, how many top 8s we end up getting. I'm sure there'll be quite a number of top 8s, and which is a ranking within the point system within the Olympics too. So look, there's a number of ways of measuring the success, and I think after the Olympics, I'm sure everybody will have their say and we'll have a look at it. And yes, that'll form part of the review. There's no doubt. But I think I think we're looking at it from a very positive perspective at the moment. I think most people know, if all our stars align, yes, we could end up with 6 medals. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But we need everything to go right for a lot of people. I think people I'm talking to now obviously know their athletics, and so I think pretty much everyone knows that it's the top 3 are probably Sally, Mitch, and Jared Talent, are 3 that you would hope we could almost pencil in,
yes,
without putting too much pressure on them. The next 3 come from people like Jared Bannister, Ben Harradine, Danny Samuels, maybe even a Kim Mickle, who knows, maybe even the 4x4.
Yeah.
What happens there? So there are opportunities there, and I've probably left a couple out there. Who there's usually 1 or 2 who outperform and surprise everyone. So yes, there's lots of ways of measuring success, but let's just see what happens as our friends over at the swimming find out. It's not as easy as we've got a tough gig, over 200 nations in athletics, and I think we hold our own pretty well in relative terms.
What do you feel like the prospects are for the sport in the next couple of years? What are the plans for athletics in Australia?
Yes, well, that's really important, Hamish. As I touched on before, we've already been sort of working through our strategic plan going forward. We've had some really good, strong discussions with Matt Favier and the AIS and Simon Hollingsworth at the Sports Commission. So we are already planning for the next 4-year cycle. In fact, the next 8-year cycle through to next 6-year cycle, I should say, through to the Commonwealth Games, even being on the Gold Coast. So we've got a real opportunity to do some really positive stuff in athletics during those next 6 years. And I think probably most people watching this will be aware of how well our juniors just went in Spain.
Yeah, in Barcelona, yes.
So we had 59 athletes that qualified over there, and I think one of our best results ever as far as medals and top 8s go there. So our challenge is to keep those people, not only keep them in the sport, but to take them to the next level. We're aligning really closely with all the institutes around Australia, from the AIS and VISs of the world, etc., etc. And that's really starting to show, what has happened and the positive parts of bringing the young people through through that system. And so we believe that's the right method, and getting our coaches involved and connected with the institutes is the way forward. So we think we're on the right track. Still a hell of a lot of work to be done and whole lots of challenges, and but we believe we've got the right programs in place. We've just got to keep working hard and making sure that we give the opportunity to the young athletes coming through.
And last question. This is the biggest athletics event in the world. What are you most looking forward to watching both within the team and outside the Australian team?
Okay, from an Australian perspective, I'm actually quite excited about. I just realised I left out Steve Hooker before when I was mentioning all those medal chances.
Oh, we don't want to make Steve Hooker angry.
So possibly that's something I'm looking forward to, whether Steve can really pull one out, because we know he's worked really hard and got back. So that's one. But a little outsider of mine is Jared Bannister. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a bit of a sprinting background, so I love watching the 400s, and I can't wait to see how Steve Solomon does run and the 4x4 guys compete. I'm really looking forward to see how Mel Breen goes. She's worked so hard, and she worked right through the Australian summer. Yeah. So look, there's a heap of things from my perspective. I guess internationally, it'll be interesting how Mr. Bolt goes. And
yes.
But I'm a bit dirty that everyone believes Johan Blake's going to beat him, because at the World Champs last year, that I picked Blake might be an upset for the Olympics, but now everyone thinks that. So I'm very keen on seeing how Blake goes. But that's the 100 metre, obviously the blue ribbon. But some of our distance athletes have been showing some really good form too. I'm really looking forward to hoping Jeff Risley and Ryan Gregson really come up as well.
That Australian record in the 800 might go.
What's that, sorry?
The Australian record in the 800, it might finally be broken.
Yes, well, that's right. All accounts, all the distance boys are going really, really well. So there's heaps to look forward to, Hamish. A very long answer, I know, I'm sorry. But, very excited and can't wait for it all to get going.
Well, thanks very much for talking with us, Dallas. You've been listening to Lakeside to London with Dallas O'Brien, Athletics Australia CEO. Good luck to you and to all the Flame. We'll be watching with intense interest. We'll be cheering like crazy. And good luck.